Ethan had spent 2 years building what he believed was a real family with Lauren and little Mia. He woke up early, packed lunches, fixed leaky faucets, and read bedtime stories, never once thinking of Mia as anything other than his own daughter. So when Lauren sat him down one evening with a strangely calm expression, he didn't expect his entire world to tilt. She told him she had decided to move back in with her ex, Derek, claiming it would be better for Mia. Then, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, she added that she still wanted to keep dating Ethan on the side. The room fell silent, heavy and cold, but Ethan forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Inside, something shifted. Something quiet. Something dangerous. Lauren spent the next few days explaining her decision, as if she were giving Ethan a business presentation. She repeated the same lines over and over, insisting that Derek deserved another chance as Mia's father, and that living together again would create a healthier environment for the child. Every sentence sounded rehearsed, polished, and strangely detached, as if she had practiced it in front of a mirror. Ethan listened quietly, nodding when appropriate, masking the growing knot in his stomach. She made a point to remind him that he was not Mia's biological father, slipping the words in casually but sharply enough to sting. It was her way of lowering his value while justifying her decision, and she didn't even try to hide how easy it seemed for her. What surprised him most was how she tried to soften the blow with an offer that only made things worse. She told him they could still date. She said it with a bright smile, as if she were proposing a weekend trip or asking him what he wanted for dinner. Ethan stared at her, studying her face, searching for even a flicker of guilt or conflict, but there was nothing. Just confidence. Just expectation. Just entitlement. Lauren behaved as though she were doing him a favor by offering to keep him around. She said Derek knew about the plan and was fine with it, emphasizing how mature the arrangement was. Ethan felt something inside him pull tight, like a wire being stretched too far. But he kept his expression calm and agreeable. He told her he understood, that if this was what she truly believed was best for Mia, then he would support it. The relief on her face was immediate, and that alone told Ethan everything he needed to know. She hadn't expected resistance. She had expected him to comply, to accept the downgraded role she had crafted for him, to feel grateful that she still wanted him at all. From that moment on, she became almost overly cheerful with him, convinced that she had navigated the situation gracefully. She talked nonstop about logistics, when she would move in, how she would split her time, how Derek would handle certain responsibilities, how she and Ethan could still meet up like before. Ethan listened, as if they were discussing the weather. But behind every nod and every gentle reply, he was cataloging her words, memorizing details, and silently connecting dots. Her explanations didn't sound like a sacrifice for Mia. They sounded like a return to a life she had secretly wanted all along. She spoke of Derek with a softness she never used with Ethan, even when she tried to hide it. She slipped into nostalgia too easily, too naturally, as if she had been mentally living with Derek long before she announced it aloud. Every time she dismissed Ethan's contributions, the nights he stayed up with Mia, the bills he paid, the support he offered, she revealed more of the truth. To her, he had never been a partner. He had been a placeholder, a resource, a convenience. Ethan didn't argue. He didn't protest or call her out. He simply absorbed everything, storing it away like evidence. Lauren mistook his silence for acceptance, unaware that he was no longer playing the role she thought he would. While she packed boxes and planned her move, Ethan was quietly preparing something of his own. And unlike her plan, his wouldn't leave anyone with the illusions they had been hiding behind. Ethan stepped into the role of the supportive boyfriend so flawlessly that Lauren didn't sense even a flicker of tension beneath his calm exterior. He offered to help her pack, drove her to appointments, and listened patiently while she rambled about how smooth the transition was going to be. She praised him for being so understanding, unaware that every compliment she gave him only widened the distance between what she believed and what he knew. Whenever she turned away, Ethan let his expression fall flat, his eyes sharpening as he observed the choices she made, the messages she typed, the calls she took. Lauren interpreted his silence as weakness, not realizing that silence can also be a warning. One afternoon, while packing boxes in their bedroom, Lauren left to take a call with Derek. Ethan stayed behind, carefully folding Mia's clothes. That was when he noticed a folder tucked beneath a stack of shirts, something he had never seen before. Out of instinct more than curiosity, he pulled it out. Inside were legal documents, court notices, and financial statements with Derek's name plastered across them. Ethan's eyes moved line by line, and the reality unraveled faster than he expected. Derek owed nearly $18,000 in child support. He had been hiding income to avoid wage garnishment. He was flagged for multiple compliance violations. And then came the text messages. Dozens of them. Between Lauren and Derek. The tone was unmistakable, thick with flirtation, nostalgia, and plans that had nothing to do with co-parenting. They spoke openly of rekindling their relationship, of moving in together, of using Ethan's generosity until Derek got back on his feet. Lauren had even joked about Ethan being practically an ATM with emotions. Ethan felt the air shift around him. There was no anger at first, only clarity. A chilling, focused clarity that washed over him like cold water. He scrolled further, reading messages where Derek mocked him, calling him gullible and easy to manipulate. Lauren agreed eagerly, adding details about how she planned to keep Ethan around for extra stability, even after she moved. For a moment, Ethan stood perfectly still, folder in hand, the room unnervingly quiet. Then he exhaled slowly, setting everything back exactly where he'd found it. Lauren returned a few minutes later, smiling as if nothing had changed. She talked about Derek's plans, about decorating Mia's new room, about how smoothly the move was progressing. Ethan nodded, his expression unreadable. She didn't notice the shift. She didn't notice anything. Over the next few days, Ethan maintained his flawless performance. He brought Lauren takeout, helped her load boxes into the car, and reassured her every time she doubted whether Derek was ready. But now, every gesture was calculated. Every question he asked was designed to confirm what he already knew. Lauren talked more freely than ever, unaware that Ethan was memorizing her words, filing them away, and shaping a plan with quiet precision. She believed she had full control of the situation. She believed Ethan would remain loyal even as she betrayed him. What she didn't realize was that Ethan had stopped playing her game the second he opened that folder. And from that moment on, he was preparing an ending she never saw coming. Ethan woke up early the morning. Lauren planned to move in with Derek. The sky was still dark, and the house felt unusually quiet, as if it were holding its breath. Lauren bustled around excitedly, convinced everything was finally falling into place. She didn't notice the calm precision in Ethan's movements, the way he checked every box she packed, or the moment his hand lingered just long enough to slip a few folded sheets of paper into his jacket. He played his role perfectly. He carried boxes to the car, buckled Mia into her seat, and even joked lightly with Lauren as if he were genuinely happy for her. Inside, his thoughts were cold, orderly, and sharper than ever. When they arrived at Derek's house, Lauren immediately rushed inside to show Mia the room they had prepared. Derek appeared at the door, giving Ethan a smug, dismissive nod, a gesture that only confirmed every message Ethan had read. Ethan didn't respond. He didn't need to. He simply told Lauren he'd wait outside while she got settled. The moment the front door closed, Ethan walked to the mailbox perched by the edge of the yard. It was small, old-fashioned, and slightly dented, the kind of mailbox people rarely check unless they're expecting something. He opened it without hesitation. Inside, He placed a thick envelope, one he had spent the previous night assembling with meticulous care. Copies of Derek's unpaid child support notices, records of his hidden income, screenshots of messages where Derek laughed about gaming the legal system, screenshots of Lauren mocking Ethan, calling him useful and temporary, printed logs of their plans to keep Ethan paying even after they reunited. Every single piece of truth they thought would stay buried. On top of the documents, Ethan added a small handwritten note. Just one line. A line designed not to accuse, but to ignite suspicion in both directions. A line that would make Derek question Lauren, and Lauren question Derek. He closed the mailbox slowly, letting the metal latch click into place. It echoed louder than he expected. Then he walked back to the car, leaning against the door as if he were simply enjoying the morning air. After a few minutes, Lauren returned, smiling too brightly, thanking him for being so mature about everything. Ethan nodded and told her he'd head home to finish cleaning up. She hugged him lightly, more out of habit than affection, and hurried back inside without noticing the look in his eyes. As Ethan drove away, he glanced once in the rearview mirror. The house stood quietly, sunlight beginning to stretch over the roof. He knew it wouldn't stay quiet for long. By the time Derek checked the mail, whether in an hour, a day, or a week, their entire alliance would implode under the weight of their own lies. Ethan didn't need to see it happen. He didn't need to hear the shouting or the accusations. He had already delivered the truth to their doorstep. And the truth always finds a way to detonate. Derek found the envelope later that same afternoon. He had wandered out to check the mail with the easy confidence of a man who believed he was untouchable. But the moment he slid the thick bundle of papers from the mailbox, his expression shifted. He opened it right there on the porch, scanning the first few pages with growing confusion, then shock, then a violent flush of anger spreading across his face. Lauren was inside arranging Mia's clothes in drawers when the shouting began. At first she didn't understand the words, only the tone, sharp, furious, slicing through the quiet house like broken glass. She rushed outside and found Derek standing rigid, fists clenched around the documents, his eyes blazing. He shoved the papers at her, demanding an explanation. Lauren's face drained of color as she flipped through the pages, recognizing her own messages printed neatly in black and white. She stuttered, claiming she didn't know how anyone got this information, insisting she never meant for anything to be exposed. Derek didn't believe a word. He accused her of betraying him, of sabotaging him intentionally, of feeding his private information to people who could ruin his life. She tried to reach for his arm, but he jerked away from her touch. The argument escalated so quickly that neighbors peeked out from their windows, drawn by the erupting chaos. Mia watched from the doorway, frightened and silent. Derek shouted about the unpaid support, the hidden income, the legal trouble now guaranteed to come crashing down on him. He demanded to know why she had snitched on him and how long she had been planning it. Lauren tried blaming Ethan, claiming he must have fabricated the entire thing. But Derek wasn't stupid. He had seen the screenshots with her own words, her mocking laughter, her detailed plans. His rage snapped into something colder, more controlled, more dangerous. He walked back inside, grabbed Lauren's bags, and hurled them onto the lawn. He told her to get out. He told her she was done. He told her she had ruined everything. Lauren's voice cracked as she begged him to calm down, to listen, to understand she had no part in this. But Derek had already made up his mind. He slammed the door in her face, locking her out of the house she had moved into only hours earlier. Tears streaked down her cheeks as she stood on the driveway, humiliated and shaking. In desperation, she pulled out her phone and called Ethan. Her voice trembled as she asked him what he had done, insisting he had destroyed her life. Ethan answered with a calmness that made her stop mid-sentence. He told her he had simply returned documents that belonged to her. Nothing more. And nothing less. Meanwhile, Derek, still fuming inside, made another discovery. Rachel, his ex-wife, had received the same set of documents. Within hours, she filed the paperwork to reopen the case against him, adding a fresh wave of legal consequences to the avalanche already forming. Lauren stood outside in the cold, watching her new life collapse in real time, realizing too late that everything she tried to manipulate had slipped through her fingers. And Ethan, miles away, simply put his phone down and continued with his day as though nothing unusual had happened. Lauren spent the first night, after being kicked out of Derek's house, in a cheap motel on the outskirts of town. The room smelled faintly of bleach and cigarette smoke, and the flickering neon sign outside kept her awake long after Mia had fallen asleep beside her. She stared at the ceiling, replaying the day in her mind, trying to convince herself it was all a misunderstanding that could still be fixed. By morning, that illusion had already begun to crack. Her phone was flooded with messages from friends, relatives, and even people she barely knew. Some were confused, some were judgmental, and a few were openly disgusted. Screenshots were already circulating, snippets of her texts, details about Derek's unpaid child support, and hints that she and Derek had manipulated Ethan. The story had spread faster than she ever imagined possible. She checked social media, only once before slamming her phone down in horror. Her name was everywhere, tied to words like gold digger, manipulative, and toxic. Someone had posted a cropped version of the messages she sent about Ethan being an ATM with feelings, and the comments underneath were merciless. By midday, Lauren packed up her things and drove Mia to her parents' house, hopping for sympathy. Instead, her father barely spoke to her, and her mother's disappointment was written in the tight lines around her mouth. They agreed to let her stay temporarily, but made it clear they disapproved of everything she had done. Lauren felt cornered, judged, and increasingly desperate. She told herself that if Ethan would just let her come home for a while, things would stabilize. He had always been the steady one, the one who forgave easily, the one who never turned her away. So she called him. Her voice shook as she explained the situation, telling him she needed a place for her and Mia until she could sort things out. She apologized repeatedly, trying to sound sincere, insisting that she wanted to make things right. For a long moment, Ethan said nothing. She could almost picture him standing in his kitchen, expression neutral, thinking carefully before he spoke. When he finally responded, his voice was calm but unyielding. He told her he couldn't help her. He told her he had been used, lied to, and treated like a backup plan. He reminded her, without anger, without shouting, that she had made her choices and that he was no longer responsible for cleaning up the consequences. Lauren's breath caught, her eyes filling with tears. She accused him of abandoning her, of being heartless, of letting Mia suffer. But Ethan didn't react. He simply said Mia's well-being had always mattered to him, but he would no longer put himself in a situation where he was expected to sacrifice everything for someone who viewed him as disposable. Then he ended the call. Lauren screamed into the empty room, frustration and panic mixing with humiliation. She called again and again, but Ethan didn't answer. Within hours, more people in her circle began distancing themselves. Parents at Mia's former daycare refused to speak with her. A few of her coworkers unfollowed her online. Even her cousins stopped responding to her messages. The story had taken on a life of its own, and Lauren had become the villain in everyone's eyes. She felt isolated, trapped in the fallout of decisions she once made without hesitation. And the person she assumed would always catch her, no matter what she did, had finally stepped aside and let her fall. Derek's collapse unfolded faster than anyone expected. Within a week of receiving the documents, he was served with notice that the child support case had been reopened, and this time the court wasn't interested in excuses. His unpaid balance, hidden income, and repeated violations painted a picture of deliberate neglect, and the judge handling the case had little patience left for him. He was ordered to pay back the full amount immediately and face the possibility of criminal charges if he failed to comply. To avoid further punishment, he had no choice but to put his house on the market. The property that once symbolized his supposed stability became a desperate attempt to stay afloat. He sold it at a loss, barely covering the amount he owed. Even after that, the court restricted his visitation rights, labeling his behavior irresponsible and manipulative. His world shrank into a cycle of payments, paperwork, and constant supervision, leaving him with less freedom than he ever imagined. In the months that followed, the dust finally began to settle. Derek struggled with the financial wreckage he had tried so hard to avoid, forcing him into a quieter, smaller life defined by court dates and monitored visits. Lauren drifted from one temporary solution to another, unable to regain the control she once took for granted. Every bridge she had relied on was burned, and every person she had manipulated kept their distance. She tried rebuilding her reputation, but few were willing to forget the trail of choices that led her here. Ethan, on the other hand, moved forward with a calm steadiness that surprised even himself. He focused on work, friendships, and the slow process of rediscovering who he was without the weight of constant chaos. He maintained a gentle connection with Mia, sending her letters and small drawings that continued to brighten her days. There were no dramatic confrontations, no lingering resentment, just a quiet separation between him and the people who had once taken advantage of his kindness. In the end, the balance was unmistakable. Those who had schemed paid with instability, lost trust, and fractured futures. And the one who acted with honesty walked away lighter, stronger, and finally free.